There's a phrase that developers say where something doesn't pencil. What they're neglecting to say is it doesn't pencil enough. I don't look for any outside money. I don't want public funds in my projects because they come with strings attached. It's easy to do affordable housing without subsidy. I don't use subsidies when my costs are low. It's pretty simple. It's also super affordable by what I'm not doing. My expenses are way cheaper because I don't have conditioned corridors and I don't have an elevator expense, all these other things. I'm Cavenaugh, and I own Guerrilla Development, a development firm here in Portland, Oregon. I just do quirky projects here, infill projects, mostly small to medium scale. Half of them are adaptive reuse projects, half of them are new construction. We've got 24 projects. A dozen of them are completed, and a dozen are on the boards or under construction. I've been doing this for 20 years, trained as an architect, one of the 50% of architecture grads who isn't a licensed architect. I chose the development path. I don't want to call myself a real estate developer because that's like always the bad guy in the movies, but that's my profession. Guerrilla development came out after the last recession. It's guerrilla guerrilla warfare, not like the animal. We get a lot accomplished with a little. We punch above our weight class because of that mindset. We do office, retail, a lot of restaurant, a lot of food, residential. We don't do industrial. Portland has the smallest city blocks in America. I end up taking on little 50-foot by 100-foot lots, and I try to do a lot with them. They end up being boutique infill products. I'm doing like 2x6s and slab on grade and back of the pickup truck contractors. It's easy to do affordable housing without subsidy. I don't use subsidies when my costs are low. It's pretty simple. Huge general contractors who have a ton of overhead and your construction typology is pretty expensive. These are always long-term holds, also manage our properties, and we never want to sell. These are annuities. When you don't sell a property, it doesn't matter. If a product costs $1 million, it has to be worth $2 million for a developer to do it and flip it and sell it and make $1 million. I don't look at it that way. If it costs $1 million, it has to be worth 1.2, 1.1. I don't care. As long as it spins off income and I can keep it. 10 years from now, it's going to look silly. It's going to be amazing. So I don't have to have the same kind of focus that a traditional flipping mindset developer has.
So you're a long-term hold neighborhood infill placemaking developer.
Every product I do is an experiment, showing that artful design can also be profitable, or how can I help combat the social ails that have kind of ravaged Portland. It's my first homeless housing solution. It's a 6-unit project. One of the 6 units is an 11-bed SRO. Purple building that we see, that has the 2 market rate lofts upstairs. The blue building in back, half of the ground floor is the ADA room and also the common rooms, the living room, dining room. And upstairs, there are another 10 bedrooms, individual shower, individual toilet, washers and dryers. It's one of the market rate lofts. So that rents for $1,800 a month. And the retail spaces, the coffee shop, the cupcake baker, the hair salon, they are all paying a lot of rent, and they help to internally subsidize the homeless housing unit. So there are now 11 people that called this home, they're formerly homeless, pay some rent, but they have a stipend that covers it. And this is profitable. It makes a 7% distribution for all the investors. Next year it'll be 8%, the year after 9%. It just slowly creeps up because those market rate units, their rent goes up. The Dumbell is the first crowd-funded new construction in America. It's office over retail. I spent $200,000 in legal fees. I had to wait a year and a half to get all the paperwork done and raise the money. And I only raised $1.5 million. It would have been significantly easier and more profitable if I didn't do that. That's very artful and very profitable. And I'm proud of it. I want the city to have more of those kinds of projects. So I have a lot of restaurant and a lot of food and beverage. And the Zipper is a neat example. 7 units, new construction. The Zipper for $106 a square foot. Yeah, there's a full bar. It's visually interesting and it makes a crap ton of money, and I'm proud of both. All of my stuff tends to be close in East Side Portland. That we're going to look at today are kind of straightforward projects. What's interesting about them is the affordable housing and the financial mechanism of how I can get them across the finish line. But I bought a 100-foot by 200-foot half a block. The Portland blocks are 200-foot by 200-foot. My site, which is a quarter block, is an existing 1-story building. That's what we're looking at to the right. I'm keeping that building on the remaining parking lot, a little bit less than 10,000 square feet. It's my only opportunity zone project. It's only a 4-story wood frame, split level walk-up. 39 units, no elevator. It doesn't have a common heated and conditioned corridor. Very low cost. It's allowed, just no one does it. Again, it's the whole idea of looking in the rearview mirror versus looking forward. But the cool thing is, it was done this way 100 years ago. The code allows it, People just assume that nobody wants to lug a bed mattress up 4 flights of stairs. You could build a 5-story walk-up by code right now. Super green by what I'm not doing. It's also super affordable by what I'm not doing. My expenses are way cheaper because I don't have conditioned corridors and I don't have an elevator expense, all these other things. And it allows me to spend money. Those windows right there are massive. There's precast concrete that's kind of holding up that area that juts out. This is the only part of town where you can build out over the sidewalk. In case a car hits it or in case anything happens, this could be modular, but I'm just stick building it. And it's going to come in at a pretty good price. We're through design review. We'll probably be breaking ground in 60 days. Everything I do is allowed by right. 15 months from now.
From acquisition all the way through completion.
3 years is super slow for me, but it'll be 3 years start to finish. Everything else will take under 2 years, start to finish. 15 years ago, the city decided that any site that was within 500 feet of mass transit, whether it be light rail or a bus, all parking regulations went out the window. This is going to be something that other developers take the nexus or the idea of what I'm doing, but you're not going to be able to mimic them exactly because there is no parking in any of my buildings. And that's a tip of the hat to the city of Portland. I'm really proud of the city for that because I've given lectures in other cities and the first thing they say is, yeah, we can't do this. The only pushback I get when I present to a neighborhood is somebody to maybe to like, hey, like it's gonna make parking hard. When you bought your house, 2 things you certainly don't have rights to are your view and the parking space on the street in front of your house. But the other thing I say is, when we go on vacation, where do we want to go? Paris, we want to go to Amsterdam. New York City, we want to go to San Francisco. We don't want to go to Bakersfield, Phoenix, Des Moines. The last 3 cities I've mentioned, parking's really easy. They're very sprawly. Do we want Portland to be more like Phoenix or more like Paris?
Paris of the Oregon coast.
All of my stuff is open source. So if you go on my website, click on the pro forma, for example, and you can just download my Excel pro forma right there.
Yeah.
My capital stack involves money from individual investors, usually in the neighborhood, in the community, a loan from a bank, and then my sweat equity. Yeah, nothing weird about it. My 10-year IRR, what is it, 14? It's like kind of low for me, but that's not counting the tax benefit from the opportunity zone. And hearing from other developers, that adds 3 to 4% onto the return.
This is notable because the mix of tenants here, 10 units, 10 of these units have this internal subsidization.
For foster kids. Maybe 3 units on this would have been required to be affordable. I'll likely master lease those 10 units to an agency that knows the best 18-year-olds aging out of their system would make the most hay out of this location and this benefit. I don't look for any outside money. I don't want public funds in my projects because they come with strings attached. I don't want to pay prevailing wage. I don't want my contractors to be forced to pay prevailing wage. Usually I'm building closer to $220 a square foot for something like this. So I've left some room for higher value materials. There's a phrase that developers say where something doesn't pencil. What they're neglecting to say is it doesn't pencil enough. But when I reached out to my investors, said, do you want to do this project? It's a 14% return and we're housing 10 18-year-olds who are aging out of the foster care system because they're more inclined to become homeless and they're more vulnerable. And this is a great location. They're great jobs and it's close to Portland State University. Every single investor that I approached said, of course, no brainer.
How do you pick your risk return threshold?
There's no magic answer to that question. There are some investors who they don't even care what the return is. And Jolene's cousins, they're like $25,000 chunks from investors. Great Scott Trio, it's more like $500,000 chunks.
So
14%. I've got 230 investors in the Dumbell. That's too much. Great Scott Trio has 7 investors. That's a lovely amount. An unaccredited investor can't get a 14, or in the case of the Zipper, a 33% annual return because I'm not allowed to talk to her. Her retirement options are mutual funds. That's what's broken with the wealth strata in America. And I love that the Dumbell could philosophically bring people into the room that were otherwise not allowed in the room.
Love it. That's great.
I run away from institutional tenants, but also institutional investors. I don't want institutional money. I don't want money that comes from folk who only look at yield as the only answer. A friend of mine, Mishi Slick, once said, you explain the capital stack to me, and I'll tell you almost exactly, even down to the color. what the building looks like.
You have an incredible Rolodex of investors that are willing to step up. But what are your major keys? Part of your business model that are critical to your success.
With my DNA, my wiring, I have a massive risk appetite. And I know that that's paramount to do what I do. When you pair a large risk appetite with a build and hold model, it really becomes much more conservative, because I know I'm going to make mistakes, but I can tilt into whatever windmills I want. Eventually, it makes plenty of money. Ideally, it makes money right out of the gate. Sometimes it might take 5 years to make money. And that's acceptable when you hold something for decades and decades. The combination of that risk and a long-term hold are paramount to my projects. So the bottleneck in the beginning of my career was finding what I refer to as enlightened investors. There's more money than there are people like me. So once I realized that I could be picky, and it's just like dating. I want to know how you deal with conflict. It's been the bottleneck. That's the hardest part, is all those cups of coffee, finding the enlightened investors, and they're an investor on multiple deals, and it works out really well. That paired with the risk and the long-term hold, it's pretty damn easy what I do.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for the 2 tours, overview of Portland.
Thanks, right back at you, Charlie. It was fun. It's always fun talking to you.